Yeah.
We are live.
Yay. Hello, Chris.
Hi there, Harmony.
Good to see you. Yo,
Yeah, it's
yo.
nice to see you. Yeah, it's nice
Road
to see
trip to
you.
Fairfax, episode 10. Wah, wah, wah. Following up on live, actual, real road trip together, and now back to virtual. We haven't danced together or driven somewhere together to dance since last time, but we've both been in different dances, both online and in person, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so it makes the conversation so great.
Yeah. And we've been through spring equinox. So we're in spring. I just thought I'd throw that in because it's beautiful
Mhm.
out, weather, longer days, right?
Mm.
Mm. So I've sort of put out before this podcast to people as the best I'm able to actually let people know the podcast is scheduled and coming up, which I'm getting better at. In my YouTube channel, Harmony Gates is where they show up, both in a playlist, as we stack them up, but also as they come up live. At least that's one location that you can find this live broadcast. So that's not just for you, but for whoever else might be here. And just as a tip off to our audience and our writers, basically, I have not figured out the technology yet where I can Facebook Live stream, which we're doing, and watch the chat and have it all happen in real time so I can actually speak without like a reverb and an echo. And that's because technical piece, I'm actually recording through Zoom and then through Facebook. So eventually we'll work that out. But if you do have comments or things that you want to ask or comments you want to make them in the chat if you're watching now. And I'll review it. I always review that and then prepare for our next podcast. So if you want to communicate with Chris and I, that's the way to do it at this point, the best way. All right. That was housekeeping, which I remembered to do. I'm so proud of myself.
That was a good housekeeping. I was into it. Yeah. I was just sitting there like, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm actually on the podcast. I was like, yeah, I got a question.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because I don't think, Chris, let me just ask you this directly. Have you watched any episodes that we've been in? Have you reviewed or watched any of them yet?
I have not.
I didn't think so.
I have not. That's why you asked it. You knew, and you knew I wouldn't lie to you. And I was just like, no.
And it's not a finger pointing. It's just, that's how when I speak to you, I come from the place of realizing you have yet to go find one and actually watch it after you've been live in it. So
I know.
I'm jealous of you because I do watch them, but I do like watching them. I'm entertained by us. And part of the reason I do that is because then I go in and I say, what did we talk about? Let me put a few points in the notes below. So when you pull up that podcast, you can go, oh, they talked about this thing I want to hear, or they didn't. So, after the fact viewing from the playlist, viewers can pick and choose in case they don't want to just binge on the whole 10 that we've done so far.
Yeah.
And more to come. All right. So you know where Chris is at. His life is busy. You don't care. He's just here for the party.
Yeah, I'm just here for the party. That's right. Yeah, I'm just here with the DJ. That's all. Me and my cat. Yeah. No, it's yeah.
I like the cat. No, she's cool.
Oh well, I don't want her to be a distraction, but it's like it was a funny meme going around on Instagram and on Facebook that was like really hit home with all the cat owners, and it was like how to prepare for a Zoom meeting, and it's a cartoon drawing of this guy at his desk and with a laptop set up, and on the wall he's got the cat duct taped to the wall. Like that. That's why I said it's a drawing. But it's like, you can relate because I'd kick her out of the room, but then it's going to be like scratch at the door.
So distraction and noise. Mm-hmm. I'm fine with the cat, and I just don't. I mean, I'm so kinesthetic, touch based anyway that to have you engaging and relationship based. So to have you engaging with the cat is not an issue for me. And hopefully if any of our viewers want to make a comment about that, they can do that in the live stream chat.
They're going to want to start interviewing here. They're like, we want to see more Azizam. You guys are great. But,
that's right. Yeah. Just put the cat on. That's all we want, right? Yeah. What's his name? Azizam?
It's Ziza. Z-I-Z-A. Ziza.
Ziza. Ziza
Yeah,
is my
yeah.
cat right here. Ziza one. Okay.
It's actually from the Chronicles of Riddick for any Chronicles of Riddick
Beyond me,
fans.
but those
Yeah,
of you
yeah,
who
yeah,
know what
yeah,
it is,
yeah,
say something
yeah.
in the chat. All right. Or
Her
yeah.
name is Ziza. Cute
Ziza.
kid.
Cute
Yeah,
kid.
so
Yeah, got it.
part of the movie.
So back to, front to, forward to, on to. Oh, all of a sudden you got very serious.
Well, I was still trying to defend myself about the podcast. The reason I hadn't watched them
Oh,
is not because I'm a busy guy. I'm up here just like chilling out in my room. I totally can. It's because I get so self-conscious. That's the problem there. It's like I want to
oh,
watch it. Yeah, but that's why I got all serious face. I was like, no, we can't leave this topic yet. It's just like once
oh,
I put it on, I'm like, great, this guy, and so
oh, yeah. Do I know that? You are not the only person that suffers from
uh,
like that kind of self-critical self-consciousness, and thank God for me, I don't suffer from that anymore. However, it was crippling earlier in my life. So
uh,
so you know, and whoever else is listening, this can be overcome. You can get to the place where you're just as wild and crazy and as abandoned as I am, even if you started out going, I hate myself on camera. I can't stand it. I'm terrible. So that's my truth. I'm sticking to it. Yeah. But I have compassion because as long as that's the inner dialogue, no way does anyone want to see themselves.
yeah, yeah. That's it. And I sound like my dad. It's like, oh God, it's like, what am I listening to right now?
Oh, no, I'm not that guy, am I? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It makes me think of something before we launch into the questions that we've been asked. How one of my friends described it. It's Billy Ray. I'll say Billy Ray's name. I don't think he'll ever watch the podcast, and I think he would appreciate me mentioning him. So, those of you who know Billy Ray, last name excluded, by the way, and he would go to the barefoot boogies, the freestyle dances, and yet be like, everybody's watching me, totally self-conscious, like just really afraid to just drop in and dance. And that was his experience for quite a long time. And then he tells this story how he showed up one day and he stepped onto the dance floor. And after a few minutes, he thought, okay, I'm in the spotlight. I'm just going to dance in the spotlight. Like that's what I'm doing now. The spotlight's on me. And danced for a little while. And as he was dancing, he finally started to look around and he realized no one was looking. What spotlight? It's all in your head. There's nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody is looking at you. It's your own inner spotlight, right? Mm-hmm. So I love that story because he was semi-cured that day of, just that whole narcissistic putting himself in the center of everybody's judgment. Because it was just an imagination. It was just, his own self-torture. And not happening at all. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I give you those words just in case you can ever make that. That's like a whole brain shift flip, just kind of go, oh, that wasn't even ever real. How about that, right?
Acid can be like that.
Yeah, exactly. It can be. So this is an acid trip without the acid. All right. So I do want to, bring a focus in a little bit here and acknowledge that I've billed this particular podcast as going to attempt to discuss and answer some questions that you have and that some of my dancers in my daily dance break have sort of asked me to speak about. And there are a couple areas. One is like, what about in the virtual dance space, like what's going on there in terms of there's lots of different options and ways that people host it and, what's good etiquette, what isn't, what's rude, what do we prefer, what is that experience? So that's one basic area is the virtual. And then I also have some questions about just in-person dancing. And so hopefully we'll have time to kind of hit those a little bit and see if that's it or there's more or something else. Okay?
Mm-hmm. That sounds good.
All right. So why don't we start? Do you have a preference where we start? If I start with my people live or
Yes.
okay.
No, no, yeah, no, I think you should.
Okay. So I actually wrote some stuff down here to make sure I could remember, but I think I've got these two questions have come from one of my regular dancers at the Zoom Daily Dance Break. It says daily, but it's 3 days a week, not daily. Disclaimer. And so one of my dancers is Joel. And so, Joel, this is for you. And we talked about it, but I think it's okay I name you. So, because I care about you and love you and want to honor you totally and let you know how much and how supported I feel by you coming to my dance and participating fully. And my dance both has 30 minutes of dancing and then 30 minutes of kind of heart sharing. And we go pretty deep in the heart sharing. We actually have sort of a safe, little intimate community there, and people have even been, not just talking about their deep experiences, but sometimes having them live with us holding space, which is pretty awesome.
Yes.
So I guess Joel was especially concerned and still is about going into a dance and how do we go in and completely let ourselves be physically in abandon? Like I call it dance with abandon, like just letting us have it, just having it. And yet stay safe, because apparently what happened for Joel was he was like all over the map and whacking people, like causing some sort of dangerous, dangerous kind of situation. And actually, I had a couple people it was so funny. On Monday, he brought this question, and then a couple people in my dance that were there on the Zoom Daily Dance had their own answers that they coached him with, which was kind of cool even before I opened my mouth. And they matched kind of where I come from with this. So grounding. And what is grounding? One of my dancers called it proprioception. Like it's an internal awareness of where my body is in space. And so there's a way that, and honestly, I thought about this just before coming on today. How do I do that? Because that's how I come present. I turn my attention in, and for me, there's a way that I really feel myself rising up out of the floor. So I'm connected to the ground and I'm rising up in the sense of getting taller. And often for me, I will raise my arms over my head as well, because that doing that has an effect on the posture that opens the chest and brings us into really the most strongest activation for posture. And so that's just one of my little tricks. I realize that's what I do. I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling really grounded. I go in and I just stand strong or sit strong. Sit bones can do the same thing, right into the chair. And a whole neurological, physiological shift happens that lets me be really in my body, kind of aware of what's outside, but in my body. And so that in itself is a skill and probably a requirement in order to dance big and dance wild, or dance with someone else even at all, but especially big and wild. So, with years of contact improvisation dance for myself, really learning how to even have 360-degree awareness. I can know behind me, under me, above me as I'm moving in a crowded space. And unless I'm not connecting to myself, which could happen, there's no way I can hit anybody. It's never going to happen, you know? And I'm dancing fully. I'm not going like, oh, I better be small because, there's a lot of people in the room, or, so yeah. Yeah, that's what I would say preliminarily to. I'm looking at you, but I'm thinking of talking to
Mm-hmm.
Joel, because
Totally,
he's the one
totally,
asking.
totally.
Yeah. And yeah, yeah. And, without really saying it, if I'm in my head, meaning like I get overexcited to the point where it's almost like my mind is big, but my body is gone, then I can be very dangerous on the dance floor, especially if I'm moving big, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I could even be invisible on the dance floor because my mind is so self-conscious that I'm like, I can't even move my body. I don't know what my body's doing. I'm just, anxious and paranoid and whatever all that is. That's kind of like, scared to be here fully. So I'm seeing you smile. Do you have
Yeah,
anything you
it's a
want to
yeah.
say
No,
about
I
that?
no. Okay, well, hey, the camera's not frozen. I'm
Yeah,
here.
no, no, you're here.
Yeah. Well, well, the reason I was smiling at first is because I was totally visualizing on the floor. I know we kind of you're a little bit more nomadic. I kind of like
Yeah.
left front speaker is usually my jam, and so I'm always in like a fixed position to always like watch you. And the reason I was smiling is like I can picture in my head you just kind of like out there doing that little move that you do, maybe a little bit of a voice thing, but yeah, I've seen you totally in your element and not even close to anything that would be like, oh, gotta kind of get some distance from that person and or be mindful of them. They seem like they're really, really into the moment. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I've never seen that. So that was the smile part, was just reflecting back on the brick and mortar and particularly Sweets Ballroom
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
remembering those dances. But that also gives me the visualization too that that's all of us, any one of us. To have that sort of thought ahead of time, like that's some incredibly forward thinking, I think, to be like, okay, how can I be completely present while completely releasing and being free? And it may sound easier than done, it may sound cliche even, but if you really think about it, it's hard,
Yeah.
and for everybody it's different.
Right.
And I've seen and experienced some stuff on the dance floor where it's like in Sweets Ballroom on a Sunday morning. I'm vividly remembering two different instances where one guy came out and like he had all these jerky movements and was just like karate chopping and just going crazy. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's gonna take somebody out. But for whatever reason, he was like still within his realm, within
Mm. Mm.
his areas of limitation.
Mm-hmm.
And like he ended up not, I mean, a couple people had to like back up a little bit, but there were no close calls. And I was sitting there saying, wow, that's really impressive. Now
Mm.
there was a really sweet couple behind me another time at a Sweets Ballroom on a Sunday morning that was dancing very lovely and very intimate. And then whack, one of them drilled me right on the back of the head
Oh,
with
God.
a fist like that,
Yeah.
just bam, like
Ah.
that. And you could tell they were in the moment, and you could tell they felt bad. and
Mm.
and and on the flip side, I've done that once where I did a back kick, and I nailed a young woman in the shin, and I knew it hurt, and I knew she went over to nurse it like I'm okay, but she was just like basically, all right, just stay away from me. And I felt so horrible, but I knew the best thing I could do was just like leave her alone. So
Yeah.
those are three instances where it could be any one of us, and each situation is very personalized, and you can't really like look at a situation and say, okay, that person's going to take somebody out. Well, the
Right.
nice couple behind you is going to be perfectly okay.
Right. Oh,
Um,
yeah. Good
yeah,
comparison. Yeah.
yeah. There's so many different dynamics to it, but I mean, for me personally, I try my best to stay relatively within my limitations. If I know that anybody's within, and this is even before COVID, but if anybody's like within a 6 to 12, uh, you know, foot space
Yeah.
between me and them,
Yeah.
then I may not get too crazy. But generally speaking, too, I've tried to adapt my moves to be a little bit softer and more fluid, and not. I mean, if I'm on virtual Zoom, then yeah, I'm practicing the boxing and all that. But if it's in like an outdoor environment or in a crowded environment, I really try to make those moves, even as passionate as they are, to still be somewhere within here, so that even if I whack somebody, it's going to be like maybe the back of the arm or the hand, and especially if there's kids, I don't do the kick swing
Yeah.
kind of moves
Yeah.
like that. but
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
that's my own personal take of like limiting myself to say, hey, I really can't, I really got to be careful not to just completely do this outward movement,
Mm-hmm.
and take somebody out,
Yeah.
and that's actually why I really like the outdoor dancing, like, and especially the Lake Merritt was really cool because I had a lot of green where
Right.
I could really just go to town and just like light it up with a jump or light it up with a kick or like
Mm-hmm.
swing my arms around. I got this new thing that I'm trying to do where I kind of spin around this way, but it takes up a lot of circumference, and if anybody's near me, that could possibly hurt the both of us.
Yeah.
So but in those situations I make sure that it's like nobody's around the space,
Right.
and that I'm really being conscious about it.
Right.
Otherwise, if I just want to let myself go and get, just like, yeah, like that.
You
If
can
I
see
want to
my
get like
face. I
that,
make a sound so the camera's like,
yeah,
like,
then I try to be putty.
yeah,
I try
yeah.
to,
And there's a way to move that you're actually not doing karate chopping. You're more like seaweed flingy, No,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I think I hear the consideration and the awareness on your part that, yeah, I'm in a social space with other people. If there's enough room and I'm skilled enough and I'm going to practice, I better have a room like that's really safe and no one's going to randomly run through, or some kid at, suites you'd be doing something, some kid would just come along on the floor. Like, if you're not aware, you could just whack them, step on them, anything else. So so,
And that's by
right.
accident.
Well, totally. Cause completely unexpected. They're not like standing somewhere and then move it. They're just, and plus below your eye level, right? Little children, we're not looking down usually at that floor level. So that, and then what I thought of too when I was listening is, and probably because years and years of practice, my nervous system is calm when I'm dancing. Is as big as I'm dancing, I'm not sort of pushing into some kind of I don't know, high intensity sort of high risk space. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm really know what I'm doing at every microsecond, pretty much at this point in my dancing career. And I can sense around, like you were talking about the guy with the karate chops and you got kind of nervous and backed off a little bit. Who's to say if people also, because our nervous systems can go, oh, make some space. This is a little dangerous. We can feel that even before we can name it, rationally, actually. Like I could say, well, maybe he's not hitting one, so he's probably safe. But my nervous system will go, this, out of control here, like back off. And so I think there's a combination. If we're paying attention a little bit we can sense somebody's wild moves as escalating, and we can back off. I know I often, when I see this happen in a live space, I will often become sort of the space maker for it. I'll either go in and ask them to calm down in some way, touch one of them, or just like come in slow and with my energy and just kind of, or back off and kind of watch everybody that's around, sort of like signaling, hey, let's give these people some room because there's a lot going on here. And if you're not totally conscious, you get whacked easily because they're just not that aware. So there's that. And the other piece that I thought about is in the couple, when you have, this is my experience a lot. Often when people find a partner, especially if it's a new partner, and it's kind of exciting and you're kind of connecting and you kind of falling in love with the person a little bit, this stuff is going on, our ability to really sense the whole room just shrinks. So we're just with that person. And I've seen more often than not, that's when, the guy picks up the woman and off they go and whack somebody, because they're just really like, they have their blinders on and they're in each other's space, but everybody else disappears. Yeah. So that's don't try that at home. And yet it captures people. Even skilled dancers can like, this is a dance and this person, and sort of there's a shift and a narrowing of attention that happens if part of our intention is to fall in love on the dance floor, then we're ready for that. It'll grab us.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well, and that's why I kind of like illustrated that one too. I'm glad you called that out because I didn't even really think about that. But the reason that I called out those three different instances, one with Karate Chopper, me with being the foot chopper, and then the Lovebirds, is because that could be any one of us in any of those situations, either falling in love or just totally
Mhm.
strung out, or, just having a good time and not seeing that poor young woman
Yeah,
behind you.
yeah,
It could be any of us. And I kind
yeah,
of think about that like with driving, when somebody, does a real jerk move and cuts me off and does something like totally bonehead. But
yeah.
then where I catch myself is I do something like that, where it's a rare exception where it's like, oh, sorry, no, I didn't see that sign. I know,
Right.
I know, I know. And it's like, it could be any one of us. So that's why I try to like lay off and just not be so critical about that. And that's why I
Yeah,
try to illustrate those three different stories.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
when you speak about the driving, it reminds me of this came not through me, but someone else. It was somebody telling a story, and I realized I just adopted it. That part of the way I slow down my judgment of somebody else when somebody does, like you say, a bonehead thing
Mhm.
is take a deep breath and go, yeah, just like me. Like I've done
Ooh.
that too,
Ooh.
right? Just like me. And that kind of levels the playing field. I'm not superior and they're a bonehead. It's like I've done really dumb things myself in my life and am still capable of doing really dumb things. Especially if I get knocked off my center, then, all bets are off. Don't be around me if you can help it.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
cool.
That's
All
very
right.
deep. We'll have to come to it another time, but there's a particular artist on Mixcloud that I listen to, and she blends all these different songs together with, sometimes little even little bits of poetry in there and stuff like that. And the one that I was listening to last night is a guy talking about all these experiences of somebody else, and he ends each statement with "just like me." So those three words just they resonate so powerfully.
Those
That's
are
a
really present for you. This is another just
Yeah.
a little loop to the side, which is kind of like I keep being reminded, I keep having active awareness again and again, frequently of recent, of how much synchronicity there really is. The fact that
Hmm.
I said that now and you listened to that last night, so it pops even more for you.
Yeah.
That's everywhere all the time when I'm paying attention,
Hmm.
honestly, and like living in alignment and with awareness and whatever it is we're trying to be as heart-based adults.
Which is funny
Right?
because we talk about sharing and then like we're heart sharing right now and then whoop, I just dropped in, it's like, whoa, it's like
Yeah,
welcome to the
yeah,
Harmony and Chris show.
yeah. And that's, I mean, we have the range, which is
Uh-huh.
nice. We
Yeah.
can, we can, we can riff, we can laugh, we can drop in and have a profound moment as well. Yeah, cool. Glad you mentioned that.
Mhm.
I'm looking at my document again. Oh, wow. There's actually 3 questions here. This one might take a whole other podcast, so I'm going to save it kind of for last. And it's from Joel, and it is about how we non-verbally signal um, that we want to join with someone or separate or whatnot on the dance floor. And I mean, for me, that's a couple books. Though I could write a couple books on that
No,
in
I
some way.
know. Yeah.
After 5 sentences, I've said it all, but then there's all the nuance of it. So I'm gonna put that one on hold for now, just for a second, or maybe we'll see how long. And then another one that I think is sweet that has come from Joel is, and especially I talked about it a little bit in my daily dance breaks, where how much of our emotion can we feel safe in feeling fully and expressing when we're on a freestyle dance floor, right? So in Joel's case, he said when he started coming into the dances, he had lost his wife and he was just in a ton of grief and he needed to cry a lot, you know, and that's just where he was. He mentioned that, if I heard it correctly, we were on the phone today talking a little bit about this, that in his case, he joined a community dance that was not 300 people. It was probably more like 40 or 50 people, I'm guessing, where he dances. And that not only did he allow himself to really weep and weep profoundly, but that he felt held and supported by the community. That, you know, in the different ways that people either made eye contact with him or sat with him or just didn't make him wrong and let him have his emotions, that, and he was really, really appreciative of that. And I guess the question was like, is that okay to do that? To be fully emotionally expressed. And in this case, we're talking about tears, but there's also what happens if you're angry, or have another powerful emotion, or falling in love on the dance. There's lots of ways we can be emotionally really full and wanting to experience and not be shamed for it, or and even not only not be shamed for it, but even be supported. Like that's going the extra mile to find that we can have those experiences, and we can have them with our dance, and the word that I almost said was our dance community, because I think that's an operative word. uh Sweets Ballroom, for instance, 300 people. I know a lot of people there because I've been dancing there for 10 years, but it is also a transient crowd. There's some regulars, there's people coming and going. And my experience with that is there's less likely a chance of really being held emotionally unless I have a core of people that I go to the dance with, or kind of my little pod, or the dance itself is a smaller community sort of dance that's grown, where people have grown together, grown closer, know each other somewhat, and maybe spend social time outside the dance.
Right.
You know, in my case, there was a picnic for ecstatic dance, because there's no talking on the dance floor, so you can't just really have those conversations and get to know people. It's not like you're holding your drink and your cigarette and talking and dancing. This is not what we're
Yeah.
talking about, the kind of dance we're talking about. But, in order to, because dances can be very emotional and very, powerful experiences. They can also be really fun. They can also be exciting. There's all kinds of ways that, just even moving our bodies helps us be in touch with our emotions and feel them, and allow them. And so for me, it was very, very supportive to be able to leave that dance on Sunday morning, go over to Fairyland, where we had a little place designated, uh, and people would sort of casually show up there, and then be able to just kind of chill with people and talk with them and get to know them a little bit. And that kind of community, I think, is um, uh, really supportive of us connecting, belonging, and feeling like, yeah, if I'm already known by that community and I have an anger attack on the dance floor, I'm probably going to be okay. People will do what they need to. They're not going to go kick that
Hmm.
person out permanently,
Hmm.
right? Uh, and if I need to cry, someone will come over and ask me if I'm okay and what do I need, and, can they support me? And that's the beauty of what can happen, I think, when partly because dance and that free kind of movement can really get us more in touch with ourselves and allow us to be more vulnerable and more transparent to other people. So that's my answer to that. Um, I'm curious how it is for you in terms of emotion.
Well, I think first of all, you really nailed it as far as like for Sweets Ballroom, for example, how if it's a much larger community, sometimes that will be difficult to make that kind of connection. Because what I don't want to do is give the kind of impression that it's like, oh, I'm any ecstatic dance that I walk into, I'm going to be totally loved and accepted. I mean, you have to give too. It's like you have to show up, you have to be a face, be a person. Doesn't mean you have to be a regular or anything like that. But I kind of like to say that as like a general disclaimer, because I'm trying to get out of like ecstatic dance like mode and just like regular like talking to the world sort of mode, if that makes any sense. But yeah, where I was going with that is that I think it's perfectly okay to walk into any of these environments and just come as who you are. And I think that's going to be the same way as if you walk into like a library or a grocery store or anything like that. If you're asking, is it okay for me to just act out at ecstatic dance? I'm going to say the answer is no.
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 Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to be straight up about that. But as far as for, I think where Joel's going with that and the question that he's asking, that's what I really want to answer. And to that, I want to say absolutely yes. I want to say that my impression, and I'd like to think I've been to a fair number of different sort of conscious dances, and whether it's ecstatic dance or similar to that, all of them have been 100% consistent, opening, welcoming, nothing but smiles, very easy to make a connection, whether you want it to be verbal or nonverbal. I've always felt more just incredibly welcome. And on the dance communities that I was a little bit more trepid, thinking that like, oh, maybe they won't because it's that kind of community, my own restrictions here,
Right.
they end up being the most like amazing, lovingly, like take me in right away, let's hang out and have a barbecue
Wow.
kind of dance.
Wow.
Yeah, like wow, that's really, really cool. So and as far as like crying versus anger, like I really see those as kind of two different things. Like just kind of letting it out and just bawling is one thing. To me, it's like an actual action where you're crying, you're shaking, you're usually pretty like fragile. But if you're angry and you've kind of got that different sort of like animalistic mode that could be potentially defensive or harmful, then I go back to the grocery store or the library example. It's like, conduct your behavior in there as you would anywhere else in public. It's not me trying to tell you what to do. It's me saying, just use your own judgment, whatever your judgment is. That's not for me to say. So, but I'd say going to that, using your own judgment, walking into an ecstatic dance, and just being yourself.
Right.
I think it's fine.
Right.
I think it's actually, I would encourage it. I personally haven't been able to do it myself, but I have been absolutely humbled and blown away by the intense bawling. Two things. One, the intense bawling that I've seen on the dance floor, but more so this person in the middle and
then the circle that forms to hold
around
space.
them. Yeah. Close, intimate, not like this, not everybody holding hands all the way out here, but holding that person and like literally they could just let go like this and wobble and everybody's there touching and healing them. And I've seen that on more than one occasion with some really loud bawling that I've been like, wow, that is impressive to have that sort of like space that you could come to and really just kind of like do that,
Wow. Yeah, I've seen in some of the smaller dances, even if someone cries and goes to the floor, someone comes and puts a hand on them, or so it's mostly a sensitive community. I think that's who's attracted kind of to these dances, at least the people that stay and find it like, this is home. I like this place. And in terms of the anger piece, I'm glad you made the distinction because quite frankly, I'm not even sure why I included anger, except he said emotions. And so I was trying to generalize it. But, and I have been blown out by people raging out loud on the dance floor. And then the whole attention of the whole dance kind of goes towards that person. And it's a trauma for everyone, actually, like you say, like a real acting out. And I think yet that when we have highly percussive staccato kind of music, it really allows me, and I think others, when we surrender to that, to move that angry energy out. In other words, it actually moves it out of the body without, having to yell or having to yell at someone or having to beat on something. So it's very therapeutic that way to just all the stress and all the stuff, you can just kind of, like pound it out, fling it out, and everyone's doing that. So it's a very safe and held space for exactly that kind of release, we'll call it. Yeah.
That's an excellent description right there. That I do. Yeah. That I do, where it's just kind of
And I actually kind of miss it when we don't have some of that music in the dance because quite frankly, in an urban environment in the US in 2021, most of it, and during COVID, most of us have a certain levels of stress that build up if we don't find
Yeah.
ways to run or swim or,
Serious.
hit a tennis ball or dance hard. It's a really uh, necessary necessary activity. I'll call it that. Yeah,
Yeah, it's an
yeah,
outlet.
yeah,
It's an outlet. And I feel like so many people are missing that
yeah.
right now, just maybe not knowing where to go. And that's where I would put a plug in for ecstatic dance right now. It's an
Absolutely.
absolutely beautiful outlet. And I actually do want to touch back on that anger piece again, because I'm really glad you brought that up. That was really important. And
Sure,
if
sure.
I'm kind of like Mr. Stern Finger like this, it's just because I'm also very protective of the dance community too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who's going to be listening to this or who's going to show up, but I like to make
Right,
that clear too, that yeah, there are rules and there are boundaries, but it's basic guidelines. Just treat other people how you'd like to be treated, but also to be kind to people, be loving, be caring. You can be in your own space and be nonverbal the entire time and
right.
just hang out with the person next to you and vibe off of that energy alone. It's that
Yeah,
easy. You don't have
yeah,
to strike up a conversation or anything like that. But
yeah.
the other cool one I remember from actually from Oakland dance, seeing this a lot, especially on Sunday morning, is where with the anger part is where you get a group of people in the middle and they start
Uh,
doing that lion's roar or the growl or whatever, and it's the vocal part, it's the vocal angle part, not like
mm-hmm.
punching like this,
Yeah,
but the like
just the loud.
ah
Mm-hmm.
ah
Mm-hmm.
yeah
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that.
And that there's a difference. That's a kind of a controlled release rather than just a chaotic, I won't do it because my mic won't pick it up anyway. But I've been there where people are just screaming like they're being
Yes.
raped, or attacked. And they're just like, I mean, that was maybe a
Yeah.
loaded word, but if
But
it's been
yes,
females in my experience
yeah.
so far. And it's wow, we need a therapist and like we need the straitjacket and this is serious stuff. And
Hmm.
I have seen the community rally or at least create space, but my sense is this is really not to be repeated. Let's not repeat this and
Hmm.
let's let this person know this is not a space where
Oh
you
yeah,
where you get to do this just
yeah.
casually or randomly. Nuh-uh, not at all. Yeah. Yeah. And the beauty of the roaring and the sounding, even if it, the roar sound, or even for me, just to make those really long tonal sounds also like balances my nervous system and just kind of like, "Gah!"
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be low. It could be a high pitch, but it has this very um, physiologically um, useful function. I'll call it
Hmm.
that. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I love that we can do that we can make the sounds um and then again, like you say, it's not puncturing through everybody else. Oh, and if it's a circle and they're facing each other, they're feeding each other, the nervous system feel this is safe. This is a group that's having this with each other. It's not out of control and it's not going to bleed into everybody else or hurt anyone else. Yeah, it's
And it's not the whole 3 hours
yeah,
too.
exactly. That too. It's a
Yeah.
little moment, like things
Yeah.
happen, circles will happen, and things happen that, come and go on the dance floor.
Yeah.
I just want to check with you my lighting because am I too dark here? Do I need to
It
turn a
did,
light on?
I kind of wondered about that. I'm like so into the conversation right now.
Yeah.
I did notice it seemed like the lighting changed a little bit.
Well, it got dark. I'm going to turn on a
Yeah.
backlight. Hang on one
Well,
second.
we're just FYI.
I know, but I'm
Oh, okay,
thinking
all
we
right, all
should
right,
go
okay.
15 minutes more today.
Yeah,
What do you
yeah,
think?
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Hey, I was just
Okay.
trying to be Mr. Timekeeper. That's all.
Appreciate it. That will help a little bit. Maybe not. I don't know if it helps, but anyway, this is what happens when it gets dark here, folks. I didn't
Right,
put
you
an
just hit the
extra light.
lights.
The
Yeah,
backlights help
yeah,
a
yeah. The
little bit,
backlights.
light it up a
A little
little
bit.
bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll come in close.
Ambiance.
Yeah, there you go. A little candlelight, a little bit of soft music. Um, well, so we have 15 minutes more. I haven't gone into the third question from Joel, but I want to touch on the virtual because that's part of what you're bringing is some questions in terms of the uh, the sort of the etiquette of virtual online dancing. And I mean, I think we can pull in at least one or two of those questions, and then we can, next podcast we can pick up and continue, unless there's, yeah, or unless we do two a week, so we can handle all of the
Yeah.
all the material that we are
I
excited to
don't know if
talk
all our
about.
viewers can handle it.
Yeah.
Just don't have enough time.
Yeah. Well, an
Yeah.
hour is a big commitment. So, but I would like to, since I said we would do that, maybe pick one question and see. We'll start with that. What's on your
Yep.
whiteboard?
Well, okay, I'll fire off the interesting one because maybe this one will be short and sweet, but
Well, no,
uh,
probably not if it's me and you, but maybe.
I know I will. Yeah. All right, let me try it.
Okay.
So, like, one of the basic fundamental rules of ecstatic dance, and I'm going to say in person, is there's no talking on the dance floor.
Right.
Now, the dance floor could be right here, and that could be the carpet onto the way to wherever else that's not the dance floor. And you can just move over to that carpet and have the conversation
You're in
over
the chill
here.
space, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're in the
Right.
chill. Yeah, I'm on the
Hmm.
east side. I'm on the west side. So I guess the thing is that, and it was me that noticed it about myself when I was up in Portland, and I hadn't seen some people that I care very much about for a very long time that I'd been wanting to dance in person with, that I used to dance up in Portland. And we just started to yuck up a storm in front of the camera. So here we're all dancing with other people on Zoom, trying to connect with everybody, making the eye contact, being present on the screen.
Mm.
And here we got, you know,
Mm.
it's just like, and a lot of it is for context because I'm like very excited to introduce them to different people in the virtual world. So a lot of it is like that person, da, 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 and this, and
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like
yeah. You're in, yeah.
all bubbly about it. But noticed that for like, it was one of the first dances that I did virtual up there, that we talked for a good chunk of it,
A
at least
lot.
a
Yeah.
lot. I'll just
A
say a
lot.
lot. It was guilty. Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
lot. And I thought about it afterwards, and it's like, okay, I'm just justifying it because I was so excited. I haven't seen them in over a year, so much to catch up on, in having them do virtual dance with me, which so many of my friends will not. But
Yeah.
it was just a
Yeah.
very exciting moment. But I kind of like checked myself afterwards, and I was like, I'm like, it's not necessarily that I'm trying to be anal about the rules in the virtual world, but here we are connecting with people on the virtual dance floor in a sacred space. If you're going to be sitting there talking, should you maybe just knock the video off and have yourself a conversation, or maybe save it for afterwards, or grab a
Hmm.
whiteboard, write it down? I don't know. So that's kind of like my question out to the universe is
Okay.
like, just
Okay.
what do you think? I'm
Let
curious.
me let me I spaced a little listening clarification. Were they in person with you and you were like all in one room and talking, but your screen was open to the other virtual people? Or were you all in virtual squares chatting through
Oh,
the
good
chat?
question. Yeah, no, it was just two of us.
Okay,
It
two
was
of us,
just
but
just
together
two
in
of
a
us
room so you
together.
could talk.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, just
All
two
right.
of us in a room so we could
Yeah.
talk.
And I've been in that also. So uh, I think it's a great question. Um, I will say and it's not just about the talking, because even if you were dancing just with that person facing them, it might have a
Mhm.
similar sort of, well, they're not really interacting with the screen at all. They're not dancing with us. They're in their duet over there. And
Hmm.
so in the smaller dances where where mostly people are in their one little Zoom square, there's one person. uh, And we could, oh wow, there's just a couple of episodes we could do on this. But I prefer it when the guidelines or the etiquette would be, if you're not actually actively dancing, you could dance in the corner and you don't have to look at the screen. But if you're not actually moving your body and enjoying at least the music and dancing, turn off your video. And there's one main reason is there's only so much real estate on the screen. And I don't want to see 5 screens with nobody doing anything, so there's kind of that, especially in a small dance, because then half the screen is somebody doing nothing, or a quarter of the screen. So, by the same token, I guess I'll be more specific in terms of what you're asking. So, on one of the dances that I attend regularly, there's often 2 people, if not 3, in one room. And they even sometimes have two screens. So it's kind of fun. Like they'll show up
Hmm.
in one and then show up in the other. What I feel often is, and I'm a big engager, so I'm not the one that's going to turn my back and not pay attention to the Zoom screen for a long time, because I'm alone and I want to at least, be taking in what I see on the screen, if not actually feeling like I'm relating with a person or a little group of people, that we're
Hmm.
somehow
Hmm.
in sync or resonating with each other and in relational space. So what else I'll notice that if there's two people and they dance, once they start to have their own little duet, I feel almost a little let down, like, oh, they're not available anymore. I can see them, but I can't, they're not looking in my direction at all.
Interesting.
However, if they do that a little and then come to the screen and then do that a little and come to the screen, there's kind of, I can see that I can even appreciate them dancing together, that I can see that, knowing that they are going to come back and say, oh, yeah, you saw me. Hi, I see you now.
Hmm.
Something like that, right?
Hmm.
There's that kind of thing. So that was just actually dancing and not the talking piece. The talking piece that you've addressed. If I think it'd be okay to talk and dance, this is just me guessing, if you're also like bringing in the screen, if you're like, la 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 la, da 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 da, la 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 la, da 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 da, right? And so it does that kind of back and forth. Um, then, especially unless there's you and only 3 people on the screen, that's too much. But if
Hmm.
it's, 20 people on the screen
Right.
in the squares, I think that's okay. Um, and I appreciate your consideration too of maybe that's best to just turn the camera off where you can still talk and look at the screen, but no one is really watching you do your talking and going like, why are they talking?
Yeah.
Although that's their
Yeah.
problem, it's that. So, um, yeah. And I think one way to answer this question for yourself, of course, is to, if you haven't had the experience, imagine that you're in a Zoom and you're watching people, half the time talking and then maybe, or however, how much talking before you're like, turn your video off.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've never, well, I mean, for me, I've never really like, and perhaps this is because I've never been an organizer, but I've never really like, for me to say I don't care what people are doing on screen may sound callous, but it's like I'm not watching that as closely. But the interesting part is that so when we did talk, we would talk a little bit, and I mean we would do this, but we were mostly focused here. So even though we
Mhm,
were talking the whole time, it was more me talking to her like this while I'm watching the screen, but
mhm,
it's all the
mhm.
focus is here.
Yeah.
But I never thought about like the relating it in an analogous sense to people dancing and what I absolutely love to watch is I love to watch and I don't get too deep in this, but I love to watch people dance on the screen. Especially intimately, is just kind of
Mhm,
really nice to kind of watch that. But
mhm,
also, too, it'd be one thing if they're just doing it the whole time, but these are people dancing intimately for a while and then coming back to the
mhm,
screen. So,
mhm.
and again, it's not a right or wrong. And maybe the question was, am I pissing people off by doing that? That's kind of what I'm curious about. I think about those kind of things.
Well,
It's
of
like, do
course,
you
and maybe people, I don't know that we can ever piss anyone off. People can become pissed off,
True.
but we didn't piss them off. We did what we
Yeah.
did and they decided to get pissed off about it. So
Yeah.
just to clarify that, I think that's a real important point. Uh, and I do hear under that you would rather not put people in that position where they're going to get pissed off, but you can't control that. You can kind of manage it, but I'll say I can't. We can't as humans. But I want to come back to what you said about the couples because I also really love watching the couples. And I realized there was another contextual piece for me because where that happened to me was in a dance where there were only like 5 active squares. And, so now 3 people, both screens, plus the 2 screens that was for each one, plus they're together. So 2 people out of the 5 are eliminated when they're dancing with each other. And so for me, there's nobody else to connect with. And that is why it was hard for me to kind of wait, you guys come back to the camera because I'm lonely over here by myself
Mm-hmm.
in my room.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's luscious to watch. It really opens my heart to see people connecting. So then
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Hmm. And I know one of your other questions is about the chats, and I think we'll not do that today, but I just want to do a teaser that for me, chatting on a Zoom is analogous to talking on the dance floor in some ways. It, you know, it's
Right?
like Right?
I'm not thinking about it until now, but now, what you said, and I'm like, wait a minute, I think I know what she's going to say next. But it's true.
Right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
almost
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
because and also you can't really type and chat and be really dancing. It's just two parts of the brain. People
Yeah.
sit and then they type and then and again, it's an adaptation for Zoom, online dances, because it's harder to make eye contact. You can't actually physically come close to somebody. There's other things we can't do to
Hmm.
initiate a dance. And then it depends, are they chatting to connect? Or are they just talking, having a little conversation about what they had for dinner and what stuffed animal what kind of chatting is it really?
See, but I love that kind of chat. I love that. You want to just yap on the screen about what you had for dinner? I'd like to know.
And what's cool about the chat too is you can ignore the chat. It's not like sounds in the air. So if I particularly don't buy that, let's have a conversation while we dance in the chat, that doesn't do anything for me. I can watch the chat and judge you and say, why is he
Yeah.
doing that? Or I can just ignore the chat and dance and let you have your whole chat experience. What do I care?
And
Right?
well, unless you're the organizer or the co-host, then I can
That's
see
a
when
whole
it gets a
different
little
thing.
tedious. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And that I think depends what you're trying to invite into the space. If it's connection, then that's part of how we connect, then okay. If it's more like an ecstatic dance where we just dance and learn stuff, or if it's a class, I don't know. I think it depends what the deeper intention is, and or how attached to, right? That the organizer might go, well, I don't really want that to happen, but I don't really care if half the people do that. Like, I'll do what I need to do here. Maybe it's on the chat, and maybe it's in the dance, and maybe it's back and forth, and a little bit of everything for everyone. That
Yeah.
depends on that.
And some of them turn it off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, the chat. The other thing is the chat will light up with new chats. If there's ways you can set the chat so it's not distracting. And there's another layer I guess I can add in this little minute. When I was in dances where you could chat in order to say, hey, do you want to pin me? And we'll pin each other. Then if I chat that out, now I'm looking at the chat to see if the person answers. And if there's 15 other messages while I'm waiting, then I'm trapped in Chatville.
Yeah.
Right? And if it's everybody else trying to pin somebody else, that's one thing. But if it's just like, what did you have for dinner? Then I'm kind of not real happy with that. So, and there's, that just, I think these are the kind of things when we're regular in a dance, we talk about it and we come to a general kind of agreement about how to be in this particular dance together.
Something tells me we're going to pick up this conversation as soon as we wrap up this podcast.
We're
not done.
When we
We're
do
not
the after
done.
party.
We do the after party. That's when the cameras go off. Yeah.
Yep. This is what Chris and I do. We finish this and then we call each other and go for another.
Would you like to share? Okay, so last week the running time for this was 45 minutes. Did you look how long we talked on the phone afterwards?
I think it was an hour and a half.
It was an hour and a half.
Which kind of leads me to believe maybe we end this one and just start another one right on the fence.
Oh, God, yeah. I want to get off camera.
I got kind of worn out. It was enough talking that time, but it was fun. So
that was fun.
Yeah. And I actually I don't know, maybe I'll stop talking because I don't need to overthink it. Oh, well, is that a practice or what?
Too late.
Perfect. So we got partway through some of our stuff that we wanted to do. We haven't mentioned some other stuff that we thought about talking about, like what we did on the weekend, but we can do that anytime. It's what it is. It's
Mix
good.
It up.
Yeah. I had fun. Did you have fun?
I did have fun.
All right. Road trip number 10, folks. We had fun. Hopefully you did too. So if you're watching now, or if you watch this later, or if you just listen to it, I don't know, that's going to be another option at some point. Someone asked me for strictly podcast without the video on YouTube. Another whole chapter. By the way, if anybody has tech and wants to help and be part of this and help me, just get a hold of me, please. The thing I was going to say is, if you liked it, like it. And if you subscribe, you'll be informed as these videos come up. And if you make comments, we love those also, because now we know you've actually listened And you can comment either during the live chat while you're watching live stream or when you're watching it later, in the comment section at the bottom. So that's really supportive. Please do that.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know what you think.
That's it. Both Chris and I want to watch that. And since he doesn't watch the YouTubes, I'll tell him if there's your comment in there, and then
well,
I'll
I'm gonna at least
there.
watch this one. I gotta
That's right.
I gotta make this right. Yeah. Hey, it's just a phase.
That's right. That's right. It's just a phase, Yeah. So all good. All good. It's the end of this one. We are coming to the close. I'm going to try to actually put this in front of my eyes like you do. I usually put it somewhere weird, and but I think it's in front of my eyes. Can I? Yes, I can see my. All right, so we're sending it all off. This podcast finishing now.